The champagne glass hit the wall with a sickening asterisk thwack asterisk, the crystal shards raining down like glittering tears. I could still taste the bitter sweetness of the wine, a cruel reminder of the toast they had just made, a toast to my utter failure. They stood there, bathed in the warm glow of the dining room chandelier, their faces masks of pity and thinly veiled disgust. They thought they'd cornered me, exposed my weaknesses for all to see. They were wrong. Dead wrong. If you've ever felt like your own family doesn't understand you, subscribe now. Because family should lift you up, not tear you down. My aunt, bless her heart, or maybe not, had this unwavering belief that she was the architect of everyone's happiness. Her latest project, me Lillian, the perpetually single, vaguely employed niece who was apparently a blight on the family name. She'd decided, in her infinite wisdom, that all I needed was a successful doctor to sweep me off my feet and finally make something of myself. So she orchestrated a casual family dinner party, complete with linen napkins, overpriced hors d'oeuvres, and of course the aforementioned successful doctor. She'd been dropping hints for weeks. "Lillian, darling, you simply asterisk must make an effort," she'd coo, her voice dripping with a condescension that could curdle milk. "He's asterisk perfect asterisk for you. Stable, intelligent, and most importantly successful asterisk." I knew what she really meant. He's everything you're not. I tried to politely decline, citing work commitments and a general aversion to forced social interactions, but my protests were met with the full force of the family's collective disappointment. Apparently, my happiness was less important than their social standing. The evening started predictably enough. The usual forced pleasantries, the awkward small talk about the weather, the subtle digs at my career choices. My uncle, ever the charmer, asked me, for the millionth time, if I was still playing with computers. A condescending reference to my government job that I couldn't exactly discuss at the dinner table. My cousins, all married with perfect children and even more perfect lives, exchanged knowing glances, their pity almost palpable. I plastered on a smile, swallowed my pride, and played along, knowing that any attempt to defend myself would only be met with more criticism. "Just try to look interested," my aunt hissed in my ear as the doorbell rang, her grip on my arm tightening. "This is your chance, Lillian, don't ruin it." And then he walked in, Dr. Perfect. Tall, handsome, impeccably dressed. Exactly the kind of man my aunt would deem suitable. But as he scanned the room, his eyes landed on me and something shifted. The color drained from his face, his eyes widened in disbelief, and he muttered a single word. "Agent." Then, without another word, without so much as a glance at my bewildered family, he turned on his heel and ran. He literally ran out of the house, leaving a stunned silence in his wake. The horror on my family's faces was exquisite. My aunt's carefully constructed facade of sophistication crumbled, replaced by a look of utter mortification. My uncle sputtered incoherently, his face turning a shade of purple I didn't know existed. My cousins choked on their canapés, their perfect lives momentarily disrupted by the sheer audacity of the situation. In that moment, I realized something profound. Their validation, their approval, their constant attempts to mold me into something I wasn't. It meant nothing. I had spent so much of my life trying to please them, trying to fit into their narrow definition of success, that I had forgotten who I was. I had allowed their judgments to define me, to chip away at my confidence, to make me feel like I was somehow less than. But as I looked at their shocked faces, I felt a surge of something I hadn't felt in a long time: freedom. Their expectations, their opinions, their carefully curated world. It no longer held any power over me. The person I trusted most, my own mother's sister, my aunt. She was the one who insisted on setting me up, and now I wasn't so sure about her motives. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, punctuated only by the frantic ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. My aunt finally found her voice, a strained whisper that barely carried across the room. "Lillian," she began, her eyes narrowed. "What? What was that about?" I shrugged, feigning ignorance. "I have no idea," I said innocently. "Maybe he had a medical emergency." My uncle snorted, unconvinced. "Don't play coy with us, Lillian. You know something. What did you do?" The accusations started flying, each one more ridiculous than the last. Had I sabotaged the date on purpose? Was I trying to embarrass them? Was I simply incapable of behaving like a normal human being? I let them rant, their words washing over me like white noise. Inside, I was seething. They had no idea the truth of it, no idea who I really was or what I was capable of. They saw only the surface, the facade of the awkward, underachieving niece. They had no idea I was a special agent, deeply embedded in a covert operation, and Dr. Perfect was one of my targets. He wasn't just any doctor, he was a key player in a dangerous network, and our paths crossing here like this was a disaster. The champagne glass incident was impulsive, fueled by years of pent-up resentment and the shock of seeing him, but it also served a purpose. It was a message, a clear signal that I wouldn't be underestimated. The next few weeks were a living nightmare. My family, sensing that something was amiss, intensified their scrutiny. Every phone call, every email, every late night at the office was met with suspicion and thinly veiled hostility. My aunt took it upon herself to stage interventions, enlisting the help of my cousins to talk some sense into me. They questioned my life choices, my friends, even my clothing, their criticisms cutting deeper than they realized. I tried to deflect, to minimize, to pretend that everything was normal, but it was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain the charade. The pressure was relentless, the constant judgment chipping away at my resolve. Sleep became a luxury, my nights filled with restless tossing and turning, haunted by the faces of my family, their disappointment etched in every line. I was isolated, trapped between my duty and my family, each pulling me in opposite directions. My handler wasn't happy either. He had made it clear that my cover was compromised, and I was jeopardizing the entire operation. He gave me a choice: extract myself from the family situation or be pulled from the case entirely. It was an impossible decision. Walking away from my family would mean abandoning the only connection I had to a normal life. Staying would mean risking everything, including the mission and potentially the lives of my colleagues. I attempted to explain the situation to my mother, hoping she would understand, but she dismissed my concerns as paranoia. "They just want what's best for you, Lillian," she insisted. "You need to be more open to their advice." Her words felt like a betrayal. I had always looked up to her, admired her strength and independence, but in that moment she seemed blind to the reality of the situation. I tried to explain about my work, carefully omitting the classified details, but she refused to believe me. "You're letting your imagination run wild," she said, her voice laced with concern. "You need to get a grip on reality." I felt a wave of despair wash over me. I was alone, completely and utterly alone. Desperate, I tried a different approach. I started attending family events, forcing myself to engage in the conversations, to laugh at the jokes, to play the part of the dutiful niece. I even agreed to go on a few dates, carefully vetted by my aunt, of course. It was exhausting, a constant performance that drained me of my energy and made me feel like I was losing myself in the process. But it seemed to appease them, at least temporarily. The criticisms subsided, the interrogations ceased, and I was finally able to breathe, albeit shallowly. But I knew it couldn't last. The truth was simmering beneath the surface, waiting to erupt, and when it did, the consequences would be devastating. Their biggest weakness: they were so sure I would play the part that they didn't see what was coming. The breaking point arrived on my birthday. Another casual family dinner, ostensibly to celebrate me, but really another opportunity for my aunt to showcase her matchmaking skills. She had invited another suitable bachelor, a lawyer this time, equally bland and equally clueless. I sat through the forced conversation, the fake smiles, the thinly veiled insults, feeling like I was suffocating. The lawyer, emboldened by my aunt's effusive praise, started to pry into my personal life, asking invasive questions about my job, my finances, my dating history. I deflected as best I could, but his persistence was relentless. Finally, he asked the question that shattered the last vestige of my composure. "So, Lillian, why are you still single? Are you afraid of commitment, or are you just too picky?" My vision blurred. The glass in my hand shattered, sending shards of crystal and crimson liquid across the pristine white tablecloth. The room went silent. All eyes were on me. In that moment, something inside me snapped. The years of suppressed anger, the constant judgment, the relentless pressure, it all coalesced into a single, blinding rage. I stood up, my hands shaking, my voice trembling, and unleashed a torrent of pent-up frustration. I told them exactly what I thought of their condescending attitudes, their narrow-minded expectations, their constant attempts to control my life. I exposed their hypocrisy, their insecurities, their own failures hidden beneath a veneer of perfection. I laid bare the truth, raw and unfiltered, and the effect was devastating. The carefully constructed facade of family harmony crumbled. Accusations flew, old wounds were reopened, and long-held secrets were revealed. The dinner party descended into chaos, a swirling vortex of anger, resentment, and bitter recriminations. My aunt, her face contorted with rage, screamed that I was a disgrace, a disappointment, a black sheep who would never amount to anything. My uncle, his voice trembling with indignation, accused me of being ungrateful, selfish, and delusional. My cousins, their perfect lives momentarily shattered, joined in the chorus of condemnation, their words laced with venom and spite. I stood there, amidst the wreckage of their shattered illusions, feeling a strange sense of liberation. The truth had been spoken, the masks had been removed, and the illusion of family unity had been irrevocably destroyed. I walked out of the house, leaving them to wallow in their own misery, and I didn't look back. The rain was coming down in sheets, mirroring the storm raging inside me. I had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. My family had disowned me, my job was compromised, and my life was in shambles. I was alone, adrift in a sea of uncertainty, with no clear path forward. I drove aimlessly, the wipers struggling to keep up with the downpour, my mind racing with conflicting emotions. Anger, sadness, fear, resentment. They all swirled together, creating a toxic cocktail that threatened to consume me. I pulled over to the side of the road, the engine idling, the headlights illuminating the rain-soaked pavement. I leaned my head against the steering wheel and wept. I wept for the lost years, for the wasted effort, for the shattered dreams. I wept for the family I had lost, the life I had left behind, and the future that seemed so uncertain. As the storm raged outside, a different kind of storm was brewing within me. As I sat there, lost in my grief, a flicker of defiance ignited within my soul. They thought they had broken me, that they had driven me to the edge of despair. They thought I was defeated, helpless, and alone. But they were wrong. They had underestimated my resilience, my determination, and my capacity for revenge. I may have been down, but I was not out. I would not let them define me, control me, or destroy me. I would rise from the ashes, stronger and more determined than ever. I would turn their negativity into fuel, their insults into motivation, and their betrayal into a weapon. The tears dried up, the shaking subsided, and a cold, steely resolve settled over me. I straightened my back, lifted my chin, and started the engine. It was time to stop wallowing in self-pity and start planning my next move. I needed to disappear, to sever all ties with my past, and to rebuild my life from the ground up. I needed to find a way to clear my name, to expose the truth about Dr. Perfect, and to bring down the network he was working for. And I needed to make my family pay for their betrayal, for their cruelty, and for their attempt to destroy me. They had awakened a sleeping giant, and they would soon learn the true meaning of revenge. My biggest weapon, they believed I was still the same person, I could do anything. The first step was vanishing, not just moving apartments but erasing myself. I liquidated everything, converting assets into untraceable cryptocurrency. My government ID, gone, credit cards, canceled, social media, scrubbed, I became a ghost. I found a small, anonymous apartment in a city far from my family, a place where I could blend in and start over. The walls were thin, the neighbors loud, but it was perfect. It was a blank slate. My days were spent meticulously planning. I needed information on Dr. Perfect, real name, Alastair Finch. My resources within the agency were now unavailable, so I had to rely on my skills. I dove into the dark web, navigating encrypted channels and anonymous forums. It was a dangerous game, but I was careful, using multiple VPNs and burner devices to mask my location. Slowly, painstakingly, I pieced together his network, his operations, his contacts. He was deeply involved in illegal trafficking, using his medical expertise to facilitate the movement of substances across borders. My nights were consumed by forensic analysis. I needed evidence, irrefutable proof of his crimes, evidence that would stand up in court. I hacked into secure servers, bypassed firewalls, and decrypted encrypted files. I found financial records, communication logs, and even video footage of his illicit activities. Each piece of evidence was a victory, a step closer to bringing him down. But Finch wasn't my only target. My family had to face consequences. The plan wasn't about physical harm but psychological dismantling. I began documenting their hypocrisy, their lies, their hidden flaws. I reactivated old social media accounts under false names, befriending their friends and colleagues. I subtly leaked information, carefully crafted to expose their true nature without revealing my involvement. A scandalous affair, a shady business deal, a hidden addiction, their perfect lives started to crumble. There were close calls. My aunt almost recognized me at a charity gala, but I managed to slip away unnoticed. My cousin nearly uncovered my online alias, but I quickly deleted the account and created a new one. It was a constant game of cat and mouse, a thrilling and terrifying dance on the edge of exposure. I knew that if I was caught, everything would be over, but the risk was worth it. The satisfaction of watching their world slowly fall apart was intoxicating. I installed surveillance cameras around their homes, hidden in plain sight. Bird feeders, garden gnomes, even a fake rock, nothing was off limits. I monitored their every move, recording their conversations, capturing their secrets. I knew their routines, their habits, their weaknesses. I knew exactly how to hurt them. The anticipation grew with each passing day. I could feel the moment of reckoning drawing closer, the moment when I would unleash the full force of my revenge. The legal aspects were crucial. I couldn't simply expose Finch and my family without facing repercussions. I needed to ensure that my actions were justifiable, that I was acting within the boundaries of the law. I consulted with a lawyer, a former colleague from the agency who had gone into private practice. I carefully explained my situation, omitting the classified details, and sought his advice on how to proceed. He helped me craft a legal strategy, a plan that would allow me to expose their crimes without incriminating myself. The lawyer advised me on how to gather evidence legally, how to protect myself from liability, and how to ensure that my actions would have the maximum impact. He also warned me about the potential consequences of my actions. He reminded me that revenge is a dish best served cold, and that patience was key. He told me to be prepared for anything, that my family and Finch would likely retaliate, and that I needed to be ready to defend myself. I took his advice to heart. I knew that this wouldn't be easy, but I was determined to see it through. I began leaking the evidence to the authorities, anonymously, of course. I sent encrypted files to investigative journalists, providing them with the information they needed to expose Finch's illegal operations. I contacted law enforcement agencies in multiple countries, alerting them to his criminal activities. I made sure that the evidence was irrefutable, that it would lead to his arrest and conviction. The news spread like wildfire. Finch's network was exposed, his reputation destroyed, his empire in ruins. He was arrested, charged with multiple felonies, and faced the prospect of spending the rest of his life in prison. As for my family, their secrets were revealed. Their friends and colleagues abandoned them, their reputations tarnished, their lives irrevocably changed. My aunt's perfect marriage crumbled, my uncle's business went bankrupt, and my cousin's carefully curated lives fell apart. They lost everything. The day they tried to break me was the day they signed their own destruction warrant. They had no idea what was coming. The breakthrough came unexpectedly, while I was combing through Finch's encrypted emails. Buried deep within a seemingly innocuous thread about a medical conference, I found it, a single, cryptic attachment labeled Project Nightingale. My instincts screamed that this was it. After days of relentless decryption attempts, I finally cracked the code. The file contained a detailed ledger of every illegal transaction Finch had ever made, meticulously documented with dates, amounts, and the names of his co-conspirators. But that wasn't the shocking part. The ledger also revealed a series of coded entries referring to family investments. At first, I dismissed it as a coincidence. But as I dug deeper, I discovered a pattern. The dates and amounts corresponded with significant events in my family's lives. My aunt's lavish new house, my uncle's failing business being miraculously saved, my cousin's extravagant weddings. The truth hit me like a punch to the gut. My family was complicit. They were actively involved in Finch's illegal operations, profiting from his criminal activities. They weren't just victims of his manipulation, they were willing participants. The rage that coursed through me was unlike anything I had ever experienced. They had betrayed me not just as a family, but as human beings. They had sacrificed their morals, their integrity, and their souls for the sake of greed. And now they were going to pay the price. The trap had to be perfect. I couldn't risk alerting them prematurely. I needed to lure them into a situation where they felt safe, where they thought they were in control. So I started subtly hinting at a reconciliation. I sent anonymous gifts to their homes: flowers for my aunt, a vintage watch for my uncle, designer handbags for my cousins. Each gift was accompanied by a cryptic note expressing remorse and a desire to mend fences. At first, they were suspicious. But as the gifts continued to arrive, their curiosity grew. They started to wonder if I was genuinely sorry, if I was willing to forgive and forget. My aunt, ever the social climber, was the first to crack. She reached out to a mutual friend, discreetly inquiring about my whereabouts. I made sure the friend relayed a carefully crafted message. I was doing well, living in a new city, and eager to put the past behind me. My uncle, driven by his financial woes, was next. He sent me an email, cautiously suggesting a meeting to discuss family matters. I replied, expressing my willingness to talk, but only on my terms. My cousins, desperate to restore their tarnished reputations, followed suit. They bombarded me with messages, begging for forgiveness and promising to make amends. I played hard to get, stringing them along, fueling their hope while secretly tightening the noose. The final piece of the puzzle was the location. I needed a place where I could control the environment, where I could record everything, where they couldn't escape. I chose an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a desolate and forgotten place with a dark history. I rented it under a false name, rigging it with hidden cameras and microphones, transforming it into a sophisticated surveillance center. I even staged the scene to look like a family gathering: a long table adorned with a white tablecloth, crystal glasses, and a decadent feast. It was a macabre parody of the birthday dinner that had triggered my downfall. The invitation was simple: a formal card addressed to each member of my family, requesting their presence at a private reconciliation dinner. The date was set, the time was fixed, and the trap was sprung. As the day approached, my anxiety reached fever pitch. I spent hours rehearsing my lines, visualizing the confrontation, preparing for every possible scenario. I knew that this was a one-shot deal. If I failed, everything would be lost. But I couldn't back down. I had come too far, sacrificed too much to turn back now. This was my moment of truth, my chance to reclaim my life and exact my revenge. I checked the cameras one last time, adjusted the microphones, and took a deep breath. It was time. The first to arrive was my aunt, dressed to the nines, her face a mask of forced sincerity. She surveyed the warehouse with a mixture of apprehension and curiosity, her eyes darting around, searching for any sign of danger. I greeted her with a warm embrace, feigning forgiveness and welcoming her inside. Next came my uncle, his face etched with worry, his hands trembling slightly. He mumbled a hesitant apology, his eyes avoiding mine, his voice barely audible. I offered him a drink, leading him to the table where he sat down nervously, fiddling with his tie. Finally, my cousins arrived, their faces pale, their eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and fear. They rushed to embrace me, showering me with insincere compliments, their words hollow and meaningless. I smiled sweetly, playing the part of the forgiving niece, leading them to their seats at the table. As they settled in, their eyes fixed on the lavish spread, a sense of unease filled the air. They knew something was wrong, but they couldn't quite put their finger on it. The silence was deafening, broken only by the ticking of a clock on the wall, each tick a countdown to their doom. I raised my glass, offering a toast. To family, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. May we never forget the bonds that tie us together. They raised their glasses hesitantly, their eyes locked on mine, their faces etched with dread. This was it, the moment of truth had arrived. I pressed a button on a remote control, activating the hidden cameras and microphones. The warehouse doors slammed shut, plunging the room into darkness. A single spotlight illuminated my face, revealing a cold, steely glint in my eyes. "Let the games begin," I whispered. The sudden darkness was met with a collective gasp. A projector flickered to life, displaying images on the far wall. Alastair Finch in grainy surveillance footage, overseeing the movement of illicit substances. Then bank statements appeared, tracing the flow of money from Finch's accounts to those of my aunt, my uncle, my cousins. Their faces contorted, a mixture of disbelief and terror washing over them. "What?" What is this? My aunt stammered, her voice trembling. This is the truth, I replied, my voice amplified by the hidden speakers. The truth you've all been so desperately trying to hide. The projector continued its relentless expose, revealing their hidden affairs, their shady business dealings, their secret addictions. Each revelation was met with gasps of horror, with desperate denials, with pathetic attempts at justification. My cousins began to weep, their carefully constructed facades crumbling before my eyes. My uncle, his face ashen, slumped in his chair, defeated. My aunt, ever the fighter, launched into a tirade, accusing me of fabrication, of manipulation, of being a vengeful child. You have no proof, she screamed, her voice cracking. This is all lies. That's when I played the audio recordings. Their own voices, caught on the hidden microphones, discussing their involvement in Finch's network, their complicity in his crimes, their willingness to sacrifice anything for the sake of money and power. The room fell silent, the weight of their guilt pressing down on them. I watched as their faces crumbled, their perfect lives shattering into a million pieces. The police arrived soon after, alerted by an anonymous tip. The scene was surreal. My family, once pillars of society, being led away in handcuffs, their faces plastered across the news. Finch's entire operation was dismantled, his network exposed, his empire in ruins. The evidence I provided was irrefutable, leading to convictions and lengthy prison sentences. The fallout was swift and brutal. My aunt's marriage ended in a bitter divorce, her social standing destroyed. My uncle's business went bankrupt, his reputation irrevocably tarnished. My cousins lost their jobs, their friends, their carefully curated lives. They were ostracized, ridiculed, and shamed. They had lost everything. As for me, I watched it all unfold from a distance, a ghost in their machine. I had cleared my name, exposed the truth, and brought down those who had wronged me. It was over. The weight lifted from my shoulders, replaced by a sense of quiet satisfaction. It wasn't joy, it wasn't happiness, but it was something akin to peace. I had survived. I had rebuilt my life. I had emerged from the ashes, stronger and more determined than ever. I packed my bags, leaving the city behind, ready to start a new chapter. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of their faces on the evening news, their expressions a mixture of despair and regret. They had underestimated me, they had betrayed me, and they had paid the ultimate price. I just smiled. The road ahead was uncertain, but I faced it with newfound confidence. I knew that the scars of the past would always be with me, but they would serve as a reminder of my strength, my resilience, and my capacity for survival. I had learned a valuable lesson: never underestimate the power of revenge. It's a dangerous game, a double-edged sword, but when wielded carefully, it can be a powerful tool for justice. Revenge isn't sweet, it's necessary. It's about reclaiming your power, about standing up for yourself, about refusing to be a victim. It's about sending a message: you cannot break me without consequence. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.